Hello, everybody, and welcome to the art studio. It's so good to see you. I'm going to wait a second just to make sure that we are indeed live. I see it on my end on the Zoom side, and I just want to make sure that I'm also seeing it on the YouTube side. It looks like we are good to go. Everybody, it is this new Wednesday routine. I haven't figured out a time yet to make this consistent, but during the school year, I went live every Monday, like morning-ish, just to give an update on what's been going on in the studio, like for the week ahead. And for the summer, I thought Wednesday might be a good day because that way I can give you a little bit of a recap of what's been going on this week in the camps, and then also talk about what's going on ahead. Doing it in the middle of the week works a little better for my driving schedule. I taxi my children around a lot. And then it also gives me an opportunity midweek to give you a little demonstration. So I've got some art supplies here with me today. We're going to talk about what's going on in the Liberty studio, in the Plattwood studio, in the virtual studio, a little bit about our community partnerships that are happening this week and what's coming up and some news. And then we'll also do a project together. Sound good? So let me show you. I do have some slides, and I tried this last week and it worked out pretty well. Although I feel like I need to be like moved. One of these days, I'm going to figure out where I need to be on the screen. I need to be over here. I have a green screen behind me so that this all works really cool. But like I can make me bigger. Woo, and I can make me smaller. I can move me around on the screen. It's kind of wild and crazy. So technology. But this right here, this is a project that we were doing in Liberty for our Paint-A-Palooza camp. They've been looking at the art of like famous artists as well as art of contemporary working artists and trying out some different techniques and different types of paint. And we used some watercolors on Monday to do a background, and then to do yesterday, they finished that artwork using acrylic. So it was actually two different type of paint that we used, and we learned a little about positive and negative space and balance and different things. So I'm going to show you that project today. This is them doing the first step in Liberty. And now I'm on the wrong side of my screen, but here, I'll do this. And if you want to do this project at home, these are kind of the supplies that you're going to need. You're going to need some watercolor paints. I've got some liquid washable watercolors, but you could use stuff in the pans. I've got watercolor paper, and I highly recommend some watercolor paper. When we get to doing the project, I'll talk a little bit more about the types of paper there are and the stuff that we prefer in the studio. I've got some white acrylic that I'm going to use. And then I also have some gel pens. So I've got a white gel pen. Then of course, all the painting supplies, like a cup of water and some paper towels and some brushes. But these are just the bare bones basics. So if you want to follow along with me live, you can do that. We'll get to the first step today. And then also, if you would just start catching the replay and you want to come back and do this project later with the kids, this is a really good project to do at home. It's a watercolor painting project, but I promise it's not a crazy complicated watercolor process. Okay. Now let's talk first about what's going on in the virtual studio. So we have our Creation Nation Art Club, which teaches classes to kids at home. And there's an entire dashboard of on-demand classes in a library that they have access to, in everything from painting to drawing to mixed media to digital art to clay, all the different art mediums. And then we add to that library every week. We do those classes live, and then the recording is added to the library. So our Creation Nation members are invited to join us in the live class if they want to actually be in the creation of the new content. Otherwise, it's not like you have to be. It's all there for them to do anytime and to just on demand pull up any kind of creative endeavors that they want. So in the virtual schedule, like virtual classes this week, we taught an advanced drawing class. Miss Tori taught that one. That was on Monday. And I think she's done everything from charcoal to chalk pastels to oil pastels. And this one was a colored pencil one that she did. So that way we can learn different types of drawing medium. She's also teaching later today a beginning painting class for our young kiddos, kind of the 5 to 9 range. And that one is listed on Sawyer. It happens soon, like 3 o'clock, I think, today. Central Time. So if you want to sign up for that, the link is on our website. If you scroll all the way to the bottom and go to online classes, that'll tell you how you can get into that class. You can use any kind of paint you want. I know she's going to be using, I think, tempera paint, but you use what you have, and let me know how it goes. And then Miss Bailey is teaching Friday night, this one right here. And it is a mixed media class that meets on Friday night at 7:30, pop and popsicles. So that one's a little bit of paint and other mediums, but a lot of paint, I should say. We also have a community partnership happening later this week. So we've got St. Therese Catholic School is coming to the Flatwood studio, and they're bringing oodles of artists for us. I believe at last count, we were looking at 50 plus kiddos coming to hang out with us. And we're going to be doing a mixed media project with them. We're going to do it through a series of different stations. So we'll be sure to take lots of great pictures for you, so that way you can see how that works. And if you have a group or a school or a, I don't know, an organization that is looking for an outlet, a creative outlet, summertime's a great time to schedule those with us, because we don't have our regular evening classes. And so we can have people come into the studio during those times. A lot of times in the school year, the only time that we have available is the morning on Wednesdays, because we set that aside specifically for our preschool field trips, or like the middle of the afternoon when all the kids are in school, because that's all we got. The rest of the time, there's our regular programming going on. But in the summertime, our evenings are open. So if you've got a group that wants to come in and do something fun, we're happy to chat with you about a partnership and how we can serve you best. So I'll get some pictures there. The other thing going on tonight in the studio is our open studio for the Atkins Johnson. So we met, this will be our third meeting. It's our second open studio. Last week, the kids fleshed out their project designs. This week, Miss Allison went shopping. So if they needed illustration board, we got it. If they needed a particular canvas size, we got it for them. And so that they can get started on their project starting tonight. So, and then that gallery opening is August 2nd. So mark your calendar for the evening of August 2nd at the Atkins Johnson Museum and Farm, and you can come see our new show. All right. So I want to go through a couple camp photos, and I'm going to have to be creative with how I sit so that you can see all the amazing things that are going on. My Liberty studio is doing Paint-A-Palooza, which is an art history focused camp. Again, where they're looking at contemporary as well as famous artists and imitating, for lack of a better word. We learn a lot by imitating, and we stretch some different muscles than maybe we wouldn't otherwise, and learning different painting techniques. My Flatwoods team, they are doing, where is it? Right here. They're doing Creepy Crawlies camp. So this is that giant bug sculpture, which is an amazing wire and fiber project. They're making some bug sculptures. I've got funny group photos and more bug sculptures. This didn't work out. What if I sit in the middle? There we go. I'm going to figure this out. Yes. Oh, I wanted to talk about this. So every morning we have our community meeting, and we go through like what we're doing for the day and what the projects are, and we recognize great helpfulness and kindness and creativity. And then we play a game. And this one here is probably the most popular game that we play in Liberty. You might have seen a video on our Instagram stories, but we put the hula hoops out front and make a big long, like 15, 20 hoop, I don't know, caterpillar. And then they have to bunny hop from hoop to hoop. One team on either side. And when they meet a team member or an opposing team member in the middle, they have to do rock, paper, scissors. The winner continues on, the loser goes and gets them back in the line. And the first team to get to the end wins. This game can go on forever. And oh my gosh, do they have so much fun playing and cheering on their team members. And I want to recognize our Gary Wagner, who's next door. And oh goodness, I'm gonna forget their names, but the home healthcare organization that's also next door to us, because we line up right in front of their storefronts and play this game for like 20, 30 minutes, and they put up with it. I'm sure it's very entertaining to them as well, but thank you for their patience. It's only during the summer, otherwise we leave them alone, but they're very amazing and understanding for us. And then see, here's another picture. It's backwards to me on camera. There. And then the caterpillars over here. This is for Creepy Crawly Camp. can see some more amazing group photos. Flatwoods has this really fun photo background. I love it. I recently bought one for Liberty. I think it comes in today. Okay, so I want to go through this painting project, and this was the artist that we looked at for this one. So let me tell you a very little bit about her, and then you go look her up on Instagram, okay? Because she's awesome. So Cindy Lane, and I've got her Instagram account on my screen. She was the artist we looked at and was the inspiration that we followed for this project. She does some really amazing illustrations, but to me, as a watercolorist, my favorite thing to watch is her wet on wet paintings. And so she does a lot of like ocean themed, water themed art. And so it works so well, right? To do wet on wet watercolors and this really flowy, inky paintings. So I've got a technique that I'm going to show you here, but I wanted to make sure you knew where it originated from. So this is what we showed the kids. So you can follow her on Instagram. It's there it is, at Cindy Lane Art. And then find her and watch some of these videos. They're so like mesmerizing, you guys. So I'm gonna flip my screen to, well, we'll just leave her up there. Actually, we're gonna go, never mind. See, I got poison ivy, you guys. It's been like so itchy. Yard work, don't do it. Hang on. Let's switch my camera screen. I'm gonna disappear for a second, but don't go anywhere. Look at that, it's like magic. All right, we're gonna start our video and then we should be live streaming here. I'm gonna double check that on because it shows that on my face or my Zoom, but I wanna make sure that this is also what you're seeing on seeing on YouTube, because if not, we gotta get that fixed. If you can't see me, you can only hear me. That really kind of defeats the purpose. It's a few seconds behind, so bear with me. La, 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 la. Warning, the stream's bit rate. Oh, I gotta stop the screen share. I think that's the problem. Hang on. Stop share. Boom. Okay, now we got it. Okay, so this is my paper. Okay. And I told you I'd talk about watercolor paper. This is 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I'm gonna turn my light up a little higher. I don't really want it up that high when it's on my face, but it's good when it's on my table. 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. It's my favorite one to use. Some people love hot press. That's okay. One is not better than the other. It's just a personal preference. 140-pound is about perfect for like a student grade artwork, for learning. If you go 90-pound, it's just, especially for wet on wet, you're going to be fighting with it a lot. You're going to notice a lot more like ripples and dimples and things like that. So definitely spend the money on a 140-pound cold press and you'll love yourself more. The other thing, we buy like not the little 9x12 pad, this is 9x12 right here. We buy it in the big pads, that like 18x24 pads. And then the math works out that 18x24 gets you 4 sheets of 9x12. And that is more reasonably priced, especially if you can get it with a coupon or when it's on sale at Hobby Lobby. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to tape this down. Okay. And I like to tape it down so that it doesn't wrinkle. Because like I said, we're going to work wet on wet. We're going to get this really, really, really wet. And if you don't tape it down, it's going to wrinkle even more. It's already going to kind of do this fun wavy thing, but it will behave better if you tape it down. Now, and you want to leave it taped down until it dries. If you don't want to tape it to your table because you're like, I don't really want to have it on my table for that long, Allison, you can tape it to like a drawing board, even like the back of a cookie sheet works. Just something nice and flat. The advantage to having it on a board instead of a table, and that's how when I teach my watercolor classes, I tape to a board, is that then I can lift the board up and I can like show the camera, or I can tip it and let gravity do some work. I'm not going to pick up my table, so that is not going to happen. All right, so here's my water. I got a jar of water. I actually have 2 jars because I usually paint with 2. I probably won't need 2 today. I've got 2 brushes. One I'm going to use for the second step. That's this one right here. So I'm just going to set that off to the side. And I have a great big round brush. Not a lot of detailed work on this first step, just a lot of color going down. So let me let me show you my watercolor paints before we get started. I'm going to use liquid watercolors, but you can also use like any kind of watercolors you want, as long as they're juicy and wet. And the advantage to liquid watercolors is they're already juicy and wet. If you're using pan watercolors and you're ending up with washed out color, it's because you need to spend more time waking up the paints a little bit. So apply more water, apply more friction to the cake of the watercolors, and really wake up that pigment and mix it with the water so it's juicy and wet and full in your brush, and then you'll end up with vibrant colors. Otherwise, these are what I'm going to use. I like them because they're already in liquid form and they're washable. So we use our liquid washable watercolors a lot. But like I said, there's no reason that you can't use other watercolors with this. And the way you do wet on wet, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wet our entire paper. So I've got my paintbrush here, and I'm just going to dip in my water jar and spread it around. You could also do this with a spray bottle. You could do this with a sponge. You could do this with a dropper, although the dropper might put out too much, depending on your type of pipette. I want it kind of even. You don't want like big puddles of water. You'd be surprised how you can do this and end up with really uneven wetness. You may notice that your paper has already started to kind of bubble or bend a little bit. Okay, so everything's really wet. Can you see how shiny it is? Now, when you do this, you're probably going to take your watercolors and put them in a well and paint them down here. For time reasons, I'm not going to. I'm just gonna pour right from the bottle. You could also use a dropper. You can also dilute this a little bit if you want to. I'm not going to. I'm going to use it full strength. And rather than using a brush, I'm going to use or a dropper. I'm just going to go right from the bottle because it's faster. Look at how it moves. The advantage to doing it with a brush versus the bottle is you might get a little bit more variety in your shapes, right? When I'm pouring from a bottle, I'll probably end up with all, circles, because that's how things work out. Let's add some more. This is green. This is like a limey green. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. So when you do this with kids, you put out your muffin tin of paint. If it's water, you can even do this with food coloring if you wanted to. If you're doing the liquid, you can put it in like a muffin tin or a paint palette and do it with a brush, or do it with an eyedropper, or do it with a pipette. The point is to, you don't want to end up with all one color. You want there to be some variance in your colors, but you do want to get them to kind of blend together or make fun abstract-y kind of patterns. If your paper gets too wet, the paper can only hold so much, right? Your paper gets too wet, you're going to end up with big puddles of mud. So avoid your saturation point here. Ooh, that's a dark color. You see how that one runs? That's because that's where the dip is in my paper. I'm going to try to get all of this filled with color. Oops, I knew I wasn't going to get through this without getting stuff on my hands. I knew it. Just going to kind of pat this all around. Some of it will be darker, some of it will be lighter. You can also drop in just plain water and watch it. It'll push the pigment away. There's really no rush. I mean, it's going to dry, but you can always add more water to it. I think with the kids, the biggest thing is to make sure they don't make these giant sweeping motions, because then you lose all those really different colors that are happening here. And I got kind of some blues and some greens. You can see some of my areas are starting to dry. And I can tell that because it's a little bit more of a matte finish than I'm going to drop in some purples. Now, purple and green make brown. So I'm going to kind of put my purples a little bit more in my blue area instead of my green areas. Kind of take these clouds of purple and break them up. This is a really relaxing project for all my grown-ups out there too. Don't feel like this has to be done with kids. So you go right ahead. You do. I think it's fun. I always think it's funny when we do our camps or our classes and somebody's like, is she too old for this? Is he too old for this? And I was like, well, I mean, I think the projects are fun. And I'm 40 something. What am I? 40, 41. Does that mean you're really old? I can't remember how old you are. Oh, I got purple on my hands. Okay. There's a little bit of brown happening there. I don't hate it though. It's kind of a rusty brown. I think my purple is a very pinky purple. Look at this streak of yellowy green that's up here. That's because that's where that puddle is. Just kind of take it and drag it up to the mountains instead of the valleys. All right. So I'm going to call that quits. This is done for me. You got to know when to stop, right? So I will put my brush in my water, wash it off a little bit, move it out of the way from the camera and the computer. This is going to dry. It's going to take a little while, but until it's dry, we can't do the next step. Luckily for you, through the magic of television, I have one that's already dry. So I'm going to go ahead and unstick this one from the table, and I'm going to bring up. See, this is the cool thing you can do with gravity. Look at how that moves down the page. I do love watching watercolors move. Watercolors are my favorite, you guys. They are just amazing. Okay. Like if I have to pick something, it's always watercolors. Here's my one I did earlier. This right here, that's called a bloom. Let's take off the tape. You can leave on your tape if you want to, but I'm going to take it off just because I really like my border, my pretty clean border. Look at that. All right, so step one, we've painted our background here. And then in step two, we're going to draw our subject on top of this, and then we're going to paint the background of it. So this color right here that we've put on, this is our subject. This is what my subject is going to be fish, in case you were wondering. This is what our subject is going to be. And I thought we'll paint the background. So I'm going to draw some very simple fish shapes. And when we did this in class, the kids spent some time at camp drawing different fish. They looked at pictures of fish and they drew fish. I'm going to draw mine very simply and just in the interest of time. But fish come in lots of different shapes. And I love that because, looking at pictures of different creatures before we draw them, that works our powers of observation, right? Which is so good for being artists. I think I'll do, again, in the interest of time, I will just do half of my picture. That way you can kind of see a before and an after. How's that? And I know you probably can't see this. And this works with any subject. This doesn't have to be a fish picture. Like if you wanted to draw unicorns, you could draw unicorns. I'm really just drawing the outline of my fish. It's my silvery pencil lines. So I'm going to draw a couple little fish right here. And I'm trying to fill the whole page. Fit my fish in here. Two more. I'm going to draw a big one right here. One more right here. Maybe a baby one. Okay. Here's our next step. I've got a cup and I've got acrylic. Now my acrylic, this is a pretty heavy body acrylic. This comes out real thick. So you can mix this in like any container you want. I'm using a plastic drinking cup because that way I don't have to wash something. And I'm gonna thin it down with water. You could also thin it down with a little bit of like a paint medium. if you happen to have a paint medium. I think water works really well for this. If you don't have white acrylic, you could use a white watercolor or even a white gouache. I want it to be thin enough that I can see through it. I'm gonna grab a paper towel really quick because I'm gonna wipe off my I got the paint all the way up onto the ferrule of the brush and it gets all gunky. Okay, here we go. I got my jar of water to wash my brush. I got my paper towel to clean it, and I've got my diluted paint. I don't know if it's the right consistency, but I can always add more paint or more water. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my diluted watercolor or my diluted acrylic, and I'm going to paint around my fish. So I'm not painting the fish itself. I'm painting the negative space around the fish. By diluting the acrylic, I'll still be able to see through it, but like where it's translucent, there's so many good vocabulary words that you can learn doing art. It's translucent, and we're painting the negative space. So we're going around the fishies. Need more paint. Now, the higher your contrast is, right? So if your background was really, really dark, the higher your contrast is, the more your fish will pop off the page. You can also do more layers of the watercolor if you want to, or the acrylic if you want to. So you can build up different layers if it's not quite opaque enough. You can also add in, more of the thick white acrylic too. I'm gonna bring that acrylic right over to the edge. See how my fish start to pop off the page a little bit. This was a really good exercise in brush control, right? Because painting in and around things is tricky. And it's a very forgiving picture, right? So if you accidentally cut off your fish's tail, it's okay. You just change them into something else. Look at how that white dries lighter than it looks like it's going to, right? Watercolors do that too. They go on darker and they dry lighter. I'm not an acrylic artist, so that surprises me. See, I learned something too. I didn't know that. I rarely use acrylics. Miss Grace is my acrylic teacher. She's the one that teaches all the acrylic classes. Well, not all of them. When we teach during the school year, when we teach our multimedia classes, most of my instructors will teach that, but Miss Grace teaches the Creation Nation ones that happen on a regular basis year round. So this is our dorsal fin. Isn't that what that one's called? The one that's on top of the fish? What other things, like basic shapes, could you paint around here? Let's see. Let me think about those. It could be, I think the sea creatures are really kind of my first thought just because of the color scheme. But so I'm like, you could have sea turtles. I just recently did a picture of a sea turtle, so that's kind of top of mind. You could do, can you think of other ones? I love how doing this, you don't focus on, like, you end up with watercolor fish, but like you didn't paint watercolor fish, right? You painted the fish without painting a fish. You painted around the fish. You could also collage it. That would be really cool. Like if you drew all these little fishies on here and instead of painting around them, you cut them out. There's our fish so far. We're going to end up with a whole sea of them. Now, the next step when we're done painting around the fish is to add all the details in the fish, right? Because, and I should have brought an example. Maybe somebody will walk by the office and I can show it, because the campers still have all their artwork here, I think, anyway. We try to hold on to it in case some of them want to work on it some more during stations. But the next step for this is to add the details on the inside of the fish, right? Because right now it's just kind of a fish shape. But I mean, fish have gills and scales and eyeballs. And so we added in our fish details using white gel pens. And if you don't have a gel pen, I don't know if I would go out and buy it specifically for this project. You could also just use the paintbrush, you know? Says the girl that's more comfortable with a paintbrush than a gel pen anyway. All right, here we go. Hey, you know what's exciting? We're going to talk about this a little bit in a little bit, but when we go through announcements, but I feel the need to talk while I paint. All my Creation Nation people are like, yeah, Allison. If you take a class with me online, it's like an hour and a half monologue with Miss Allison. Stream of consciousness, just whatever comes to my brain. But Miss Sarah and I had a meeting today and we finalized the fall schedule. So that's exciting, right? So now I have to make it pretty for you. I have to like put it all in Canva and make everything pretty, but it's done. Oh, and I probably have to check some things with my staff and make sure that they're good with it, because they're the ones that have to, work the schedule. But yes, very exciting. Fall is done. I think I told you guys last week that we finally, I think, got the Flatwoods lease re-signed. So we know for sure that we'll have a building out there. That's important. It's the little things. Lots happens in the summer, but it's a lot of like behind the scenes stuff for us over here. All right, so we're almost done. I told you I'm only going to do half because I don't want you to have to sit through all of it. This is I'll do this guy over here first. You know what's interesting about watercolors is that they rehydrate. So as you can see maybe on camera, some of my white paint has a tint of blue in it when I put it down, because my acrylic paint is mixed with water and it actually like rehydrates and comes back to life when you put water on it. Unlike acrylic, if we had painted this background using an acrylic paint, it wouldn't matter what you painted over the top or how many times you painted over the top. It is not going to come up. It's going to be just like this. So watercolors will rehydrate, but acrylics do not. If you don't want your watercolor paints to rehydrate, I would recommend switching from watercolors to like an acrylic ink. That works really well. That's a good watercolor-ish substitute. So, all right. So there's my half of my fish work. When you get done with your brush, it goes into your jar of water. Like, don't leave it just laying like out on the table, right? Because otherwise it'll turn hard and gross. All right, let's see these Jelly Roll pens. The thing about white paint pens, you guys, they usually don't like me. I always joke that all paint pens and gel pens are single use because I feel like they only work once, and then the next time I go to use them in the closet, they don't work. But maybe that's just me. These ones we just used this week, so apparently they're still good. Look at that. I'm gonna make this guy, he's gonna wear glasses for sure. Fish don't have ears, but we'll just pretend. There, that's his little glasses. And then we're gonna draw little details on his fin. This is one fin. And he's got some gills. You know, if you wanted to, this could, maybe you don't use white, maybe you use black. You could put a wash of black in the background so that the background gets darker instead of lighter. And then you could do your details with black Sharpie instead of white gel pen. I feel like that might even be more accessible. I bet you have those laying around your house, right? Everybody got a Sharpie laying around. My white is not dry in the background, so I have to be careful to keep my hand off my paper when you're doing this. So you guys know the trick where you use your pinky and stabilize it, or you can even put your hand underneath your wrist to stabilize it. I have really shaky hands. The kids always point it out. Outline my little fishies. You could skip the pencil drawing too and just go straight to drawing in gel pen if you wanted. One little fishy done. Isn't that a fun little project? Look at my watercolor fish. Now this is a different watercolor fish. This guy over here, he is, right? He's like a greenish fish. He's got some fun things happening here. Give him some lips. And you could, if you wanted to, you could wait till your background is dry so you don't have to work around a wet background, but as long as you're not on YouTube at the same time. Should we put some scales on this guy? I didn't want to do the same design on his fins, so he's going to have polka dot fins. Might also have freckles. All right, so you can hopefully see how the rest of this works out. We're gonna call it good on the tutorial today. I will continue to work on mine and I'll share a video or a picture of it so you guys can see how the finished product works. If you try this out at home, I would totally love to see it. Obviously, it's one that we can continue to spend a lot of time on. And if you wanted it to go a little faster, make bigger fish because you won't have as much time to go around all of them, right? Or if you need it easier for little kids, make simpler fish and bigger fish. You could just make one fish if you wanted to, or cut your paper smaller. So that way you don't have as many to do, right? Half the time, half the paper. All right, let's go ahead and let's switch back to our forward facing camera. And let's see, it goes like this, and then it goes like this. And then I think I need my virtual PowerPoint background again. There we go. And we'll scroll ahead. Eventually I'm going to figure out how to like pick up where I left off, but you know, all the things. All right. So here's where we left off. Let me get my light turned down so I'm not scary bright. I'm going to double check that what I'm seeing on YouTube is what I'm seeing on Zoom is what you're seeing on YouTube. There we go. That's what we like. Okay. So let's just wrap this up. Those of you guys who are catching this, I appreciate all of your attention. I hope that that was a fun project and that you get to try it out. We do have a few spots I should mention. So we're doing Paint-A-Palooza right now in Liberty. And if you wanted to join us for Paint-A-Palooza, Platte Woods does Paint-A-Palooza next week. Is that correct? Yes. And they do have 2 spots, so you can totally join us if you want to. All right, now let me go over here so that you can see the dates. Yeah? Okay. So this is what we have coming up. Whoa, lost my green screen. This is what we have coming up, just kind of in the schedule. So July 6th is when we finally committed to a date to publish the class schedules and the private lesson schedules. That's probably the one that's going to take the longest, because in order to publish a private lesson schedule, I have to actually write everyone's work schedule for fall. So, so we will get those published to the website. There won't be anything to register for. It's just for information so that you can plan out your fall. I know if you're like me and you have like all the kids and all the kids' activities, plus your own schedule, and you have to figure out how you're going to get everybody everywhere. It's important to have all the information. So we're going to try to get you that July 6th on the website. So you can go to the website right now, and it is under, hang on, make sure I don't tell you wrong. I believe it's under weekly art classes, but I'm going to double check. It's under 2022-23 classes. So right from the main menu, and you click on it, and it's going to talk about the types of classes that we offer. And then it's going to, if you scroll down, it's going to talk about the pricing, because that's what people always want to know, the pricing. And then they want to know like what the schedule is. And that's the part that hasn't been done yet, but will be done. Scroll down and it says get fall class updates. And you can get like, put your email in there, and then we'll note it like when that schedule is published, we'll send you an email so that you don't forget. Okay. So that is there. Registration starts August 1st at 9 a.m. And then we've got the date for when fall classes will begin. So there's 2 dates there. And the reason is because Labor Day. There are only 4 Mondays in the month of September. And since our classes meet 4 times a month, the Monday classes have to start a week early. Does that make sense? So they'll actually start on the 29th, just the Monday evening classes and the Monday homeschool class in Liberty. And then everybody else will start Tuesday, September 6th. Okay. It's kind of like a nice soft open for us. We just get a little bit of a practice run. So those are the dates that are coming up. Just a couple notes for you guys. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel, and that way you get updates when we go live and when we've got new videos posted. We also have a link. I got to go over here. We also have a link on our website where you can customize like email preferences that you want from us. So if you feel like you're not getting the news and you're like the last to know, a couple things to check your spam folder. The other thing is to make sure that you are signed up for the information that you want. So if you're not in the special events group in my email server, like if you haven't been tagged that as an interest, then I don't send you those, or the upcoming events, or the resources for home, or whatever stuff you want. So that you can find, and I'll put the link in the comment of the video, but that you can find from the homepage. Just go to orangeeaselart.com. And it's about halfway down the page, right under like some like banners. It'll say stay connected. And then it'll tell you like, you'll put your email address in, and then you tell us what kind of news you want to get. Does that make sense? Hopefully that does. So that's the other thing. And then the last thing that I have, hang on, switch my slide. There it is. The last thing I have is just, oh, I spelled projects wrong. If there were other things spelled wrong, I don't want to know, guys. What projects do you want to see? We're going to go live here on Wednesday, every Wednesday through the summer. And I've been picking the ones from camp because I think that they're fun, and talking about how you could take a camp project and then do it at home. But if you have particular ones that you want to see, maybe it was something we did during the school year and you saw it on Instagram, and you want me to tailor it for home use, I'm happy to do it here on camera live with you. So let me know if you have any thoughts, or maybe you have an art supply at home and you're like, I don't know what to do with this, but we have it. Kind of like an art version of Chopped. I will send it my way. You can comment here, or you can send me a message to any of our social media channels, or you can send me an email, and we'll make it happen. It'll be fun. All right. So have a wonderful rest of your guys' Wednesday, and I will chat with you next week.